I remember a few years back on a plant medicine journey, I was shown the arc of the hero's journey. And I saw how a hero isn't necessarily born a hero, but that the trials and tribulations that the hero goes through is what forms and shapes them into becoming the hero of their story. In the same journey, I also saw that not only special and other people become heroes, actually each individual, each one of us goes through our own hero's journey in our own lives and in our own way, something that we choose before we come into this physical manifestation. This changed the way I look at challenges in my life. I started to see that the hardships that I faced in my life did not take away from me, and in fact, these hardships actually improved me. They made me better. They prepared me and created me into this version of myself that I was always meant to be, the person that I chose to become when I entered this incarnation. All the things that we desire for our lives, all the things that we want for ourselves, most of those things can only be had once we step into this version of ourselves, into this hero's version of ourselves, becoming the hero of our own life. So it's one thing to know this mentally. It's a whole other thing to actually embody it while you're undergoing challenges, right? And so welcome, my loves, to season 2 of Inner Worlds. This season is born of the hero's journey, of my desire and humanity's desire to always move forward, to always expand upwards to the peak, to the top of the mountain, especially after scaling the bottom for so long. So when I sat down to think about what I wanted to talk about this season, it became very clear to me that it had to be a reflection of my own hero's journey and the lessons I've learned and am continuing to learn as I go through it. And so I scoped out and I looked at my life over the last 8 months or so, right around when the challenges started, and I was able to discern a pattern. This is something I recommend doing whenever you can, reflecting on the events that have happened in your life, good and bad, so that you can discern your own patterns, your own cycles. And so I noticed this death cycle in the last 8 months, this dying to certain things and then being reborn. And so right now I'm undergoing a rebirth. And I know for a fact that I'm not alone in this. Many of you are on this exact part of your journey with me. I've heard from you and you've said the same to me. And so I looked at the last 8 months and I saw that there was death and there was grief and there was mourning of what could have been, right? We always mourn old timelines, things that could have happened for us. And then I also saw that there were moments of life, of hope, of purity. And equally as important, I saw that there was rebirth and that those moments were some of the most powerful ones. And so this season of Inner Worlds is going to explore these concepts of life, death, and rebirth. We'll explore the highs and the lows of the physical human experience, the peaks and the valleys of a heartbeat that signifies vitality and the living. We'll also talk about loss and mourning, but also of winning and celebration and the beauty of life and the goodness. And most importantly, we'll talk a lot about reinventing yourself and being reborn through these new insights that we'll gain together. It feels so crazy, my loves, to finally record this second season. In 2021, I said at the end of the season, I said I was taking a little break and I'll come back with season 2 when I have a book to talk about. I have so much more to talk about than that. Wow. So new beginnings have definitely started, more beautiful things definitely happened. And here we are once again in our first episode of the second season, Rebirth. There was a time when I thought I'd never get to record another season because so much of life was just taking center stage. And we're going to talk about the last 2.5 years since we've talked, because I fit in like 10 years of life in there and I can't wait to share it with you. But this is such a testament that everything in your life has a season. And if it's something that you really want to do, that really means something to you, that brings you purpose and passion and meaning, it will align in divine and optimal timing. So if there's something that you've been wanting to do for a while and you've been kind of beating yourself up about not being able to do it yet, it doesn't mean that it will never happen. It could definitely just be that the season isn't here yet. And when we talk about my book, I'll talk more about that because I had a book coach and we really dove deep into the creation process of a book. So for now, really try to enjoy exactly where you are. Be here now. Be where you are now. Enjoy this particular moment now, even if it doesn't look exactly the way that you want it to, because eventually it will, right? Eventually it will, and you might even miss this current season of your life. I'm here now, finally recording this because I am birthing a new version of myself now. A version of myself that has completed her Saturn return. You know, the first season I recorded in the first year of my Saturn return, and I went through some crazy things before it finished in around March 2022 or April 2022. If you want to learn more about your Saturn return, by the way, I have an episode on that on the first season. If you haven't heard it yet, I'll link it in the description here. So a part of birthing this new version of me is a return to softness and vulnerability, because I have been hardened over the last almost 1 year. And I shared a bit of this reawakening to my email list. I opened up about the last 8 months of my life and how it was drenched heartbreakingly in a lot of loss and mourning and death, but it was highlighted by such beautiful moments too. So I'll talk a little bit about that, and maybe later on in the season I can get more in depth in detail. But I shared that I had closed up around October because instead of people seeing me as human, people who I loved and served for many years online, right? Instead of seeing that I was sharing my grief and my heartache, I was seen as something quite other. And that's largely due to my Israeli American identity. There were so many, there still are every day, so many projections projected onto me, and the perspective of the internet that the internet had of me, that a lot of the people in my community had of me, or I wouldn't say community, but in my audience had of me, shifted because of my choosing to be vulnerable and share something that I really didn't need to share, but I was used to sharing so much with, my online community over the last 7+ years that it just felt like second nature to share this insane thing that I was involved in personally, right? I'm a person who's deeply involved in the main conflict on the world stage right now. And rather than looking at me as a voice to be listened to, the projections began, and I was really vilified. I internalized it for a long time. I questioned whether I was a good person for a while. I questioned everything. I learned and unlearned and relearned. And I think my perspective on everything is extremely nuanced, extremely fair, while also I'm still, I am Israeli American, right? And I am experiencing a lot of hatred just because of my identity, just because of where my family is from, where my ancestors are from. I am a native indigenous Judean. That means my family was there before 1948 for many, many generations, right? I have no connection to Europe, but for some reason, there is no nuance. There is no understanding. Nobody wants to hear from me. Nobody really, not nobody, sorry. Not nobody, but a lot of people have one way of looking at this. That is the empathetic way, that is the right way, and that's it. Now, there's also people on the other side, which I hate that this is like a football team. This is, we're dealing with people's lives here. There's people on the other side of this that also I don't agree with their perspective either. And so I find myself once again, as always, in the middle and just confused about how to move forward. And so I closed myself off like crazy, okay? And I didn't share any of the things that I went through after that. After October 7th, 1 month later, my aunt lost her battle with cancer, and I lost my beloved, beautiful aunt, who had lost her soulmate 4 years prior to cancer as well. She actually left her body on his birthday. She wasn't conscious, so we all really believe that that was purposeful, that her spirit chose to leave on that day. And in Judaism, you mourn death for 7 days with your family and with anybody who comes to visit. And the night before the last day of our Shiva, of our mourning, my beloved grandfather fell and broke his hip and had to get emergency surgery, and immediately overnight developed hospital dementia. And so this man that had a lot to do with raising me, this man that I would go visit once a week, every week that I lived in the US, and I would sit at his feet and listen to his childhood stories, now he barely recognizes me. And And his stories are no longer from this planet. They're from other lifetimes, and they're confused and disjointed. And it's not my grandpa anymore, and I miss him. And it's been hard. It's been really hard for my family. It's been hard for my mom. And all this whilst in the middle of still mourning the massacre of my husband's cousin. She was murdered at the Nova Festival, which so many attempted to politicize and dehumanized us while we grieved. You know, a lot of challenges, right? And I kept all that instead of sharing it and what I was learning through it and my grief and my mourning and my process. Instead of sharing like I was used to, I closed up and I became scared and I felt like I was not safe. I stopped trusting people. But, you know, months later, I realized that only I am losing, and the people who care about me and the people who want to hear from me, we're the ones losing from me closing up. The people who don't want to hear from me are not going to hear from me no matter what I say, right? And so I was closing myself off to feeling the full range of human emotions and experiencing everything because I didn't feel safe. And to be honest, by the way, I sort of knew that this was all going to happen. Saturn moved into Pisces last year in 2023. And since my rising is in Pisces and rising is the way that others see you, I knew that the way that I was looked at by my audience would change. I personally thought that it would change because I was moving into my 30s and more into like my wise woman energy rather than the young, excited girl who started YouTube at 24. And that I would kind of show up as more of an expert in this new stage of my life, but that's not how it manifested over the last 8 months, and that's okay. It might still happen in the future. Maybe that's what we'll move into next. We'll see. We'll totally see. But yeah, anyways, after hundreds of hateful comments and messages and death threats and the things I've read over the last 8 months, the things that have been projected onto me and sent to me, I of course completely closed up. I see it so differently now. I had to bring back my understanding of the hero's journey and my understanding that nothing in life is happening to me. Nothing's happening to us. It's all happening for us, especially when you feel this low, especially when you're going through such hardships. Because it's all good and well to have faith and to trust in the universe and trust in the divine when everything's going your way, right? And I've had years and years of things just beautifully going my way, even with small little challenges. But can you have faith when you are at the bottom of your despair, the depths of your depression and anxiety and feeling like not only does the world hate you, but you hate yourself? Can you find faith in that moment also? And as I got married, I spoke to my rabbi a lot. And he told me, actually, the divine, the creator, hears you loudest when you're at your lowest. And your prayers are louder, the loudest, when you're low. And that's kind of counterintuitive to how we see, the divine. We kind of see like God at the top of the mountain, the peak of the mountain, right? And we see heaven closer to the sky, but really God is everywhere, right? So I returned to my faith, and I returned to the understanding that everything is happening for me. And actually this is forming me and shaping me in a very specific and beautiful way. I see it so much differently now. I also realized, and this perspective shift happened like overnight, I was giving so much attention to the negative, and this is countering everything I've taught and learned and lived my life by, right? Because we want to focus on what we want to grow. And so I simply had to take my focus off the 1 in 100 negative, hurtful projections that were being thrown at me, and instead notice all the people who have been supporting me, because there's been thousands of them, thousands of supportive messages and love. And the second that I took my attention away from the hatred and towards the love, wow, everything shifted. And I'm not even kidding, in 1 week. And this is an important manifestation, a reminder that what we focus on grows. And I was focusing on the negative for such a long time. And the very moment I decided to actually triumph through my challenges, I remember telling my mom, like, no, I'm not giving up on this. I love what I do. I love my career. I love creating. I love teaching. I love spirituality. I love this. I'm not giving up on it no matter what. Even if nobody wants to hear me, I'm never going to give up. And actually, I'm going to manifest to me the people who do care about me and who do want to hear me. And I'm going to stay soft so that I can manifest to me the soft ones, right? And I'm not exaggerating. Within 1 week, things started to change. New people started to find me. My inbox was flooded with support and with love. But you know, the most important part of all this is not that I was getting validation and love and support after I shifted my mind. What was important was really the mental shift that I had. That actually, no, I'm not a victim. I'm not a victim of my circumstances. I am the hero of my story, and I'm going to choose what my life looks like. I'm going to keep co-creating with the divine. Even more importantly, that I'm not going to define myself by the validation and the approval of others, but rather I'm going to validate and approve of myself, because I'm able to get through these hardships and I'm able to show up for my family and show up for my friends and for my husband and for myself, and even through the pain, and I'm able to heal myself, and I can do all these things, and I don't need approval or acceptance from anybody other than myself. I need to approve and accept of myself. And the world started to smile back at me again through that mindset shift. So I've decided to double down on vulnerability and honesty and truth. I've returned to my values of truth, of love, of beauty, of, being seen and finding meaning. And after I sent that email to my email list explaining what I had been through, I can't even explain to you how it felt to receive hundreds of replies, comments, and messages back, because my new sense of self, my identity, my self-concept was being reflected back to me through my community. You cried with me, you heard me, you held me. I'm remembering now that vulnerability is really the way through. That softness allows me to bend with the wind rather than letting it break me. So why am I so interested in death and rebirth and all this? Because that is what connects us to the spiritual realm. When we take our material challenges and connect those understandings to the spiritual world, the metaphysical world, then we live with 1 foot in heaven and 1 foot on earth, and we can be spiritual beings that are having maybe easier experiences here on earth because things have meaning. During this heightened anxiety and insecurity and fear, I was experiencing death and loss and mourning in my life, but I was also reborn through the rituals of my Kabbalistic wedding ceremony. And then my niece was born. Oh, I love her so much. And so there were things to celebrate. But in the midst of the depression, there was a weird thing that kept lifting me up. Of course, other than my incredible support system, my husband is absolutely amazing, and my community and my family, my friends. Something that I would do for myself is I'd listen to near-death experiences on YouTube or podcasts, or I'd read books. Some of my favorite books are Dying to Be Me, Many Lives, Many Masters, Proof of Heaven. There's Journey of Souls by Michael Newton. Yeah, there's so many good ones. These people's stories are so similar to my non-abiding awakening, which I'm sure you've heard me talk about in length, but I will talk about it again this season for sure. It reminded me of the truth. It brought me back to what matters. And that's what I want this season to keep bringing to the forefront, burning truth and beauty and vulnerability and softness and rebirth. In our society, vulnerability is so often seen as a weakness. We're taught to guard ourselves, to guard our hearts. And so that's why we close up when we get a little bit of negative feedback. But so what if our heart gets broken? Even in relationships, so what? Make art out of your despair. Make something beautiful out of your pain. I have no regrets for any time my heart was broken in the past. It made me even more expansive, even more beautiful, confident, and strong. And it made me a better artist, because the greatest, most alive works of art, the most vital creations, come out of heartache, out of challenges. Again, it's the hero's journey. When we dare to be vulnerable and soft despite the world's hardness, we open ourselves up to the other soft ones. And that's how I found so many of you, the other ones that are looking for connection, for truth. And then we can connect with others in a way that's so deeply human. We give permission to our fears and insecurities to exist alongside our strengths and our joys. And we realized that this is all part of this beautiful and shared human experience. So that was kind of the bones of what we're going to experience together in this season. And I just wanted to set us up, set my intention of what I want to talk about with you, what I want to learn with you alongside you. Now I want to get into some life updates since the last season of Inner Worlds, since it's been about 2.5 years. So since about August 2021, December 2021, I got Jupiter, my baby, and manifested him. We actually did a Jupiter-themed online ceremony. Some of you may have been in there. And in that, I manifested my puppy. And it had taken me a while because I was rescuing. We were going through like a stage in Los Angeles where rescue dogs were just being adopted left and right. It was awesome. But I kept getting denied for adoption. And I lived at in an apartment at a time. So I think that affected it. And then finally, I got Jupiter. And he's just the most perfect. I was like 5th in line to get him. But I wanted him so badly, and I kept texting the woman that had rescued him. She saw how much I wanted him, and he was mine. His name was Kaipo, but obviously makes sense. I think that my sister-in-law gave me the idea to name him Jupiter. My sister-in-law or her mom, which is Galit, the astrologer. You guys know her. And he's my best friend. He's sleeping at my feet right now, my angel. He really brought so much love into my life at such a lonely time. And then I had a few fun months traveling with my friends, going to a wedding, one of my closest friends' weddings. And I remember at that wedding, just being with a couple of my other girlfriends and crying of joy because we felt so much love and so much happiness for our friend. And I think there was 3 of us there. We were like the only single ones at the wedding, for real. The only single women at the wedding. Me and my friends, Saya and Brooke. And we were just so happy for our friend. And something changed because a month later for me and Saya, we got into very serious relationships. Me with my now husband, her with her soon to be, I'm sure, fiance. And Brooke just a few months after that, the same. It's almost like we tapped into it's not almost, it is what it is. We tapped into the love frequency together. We felt so much gratitude and happiness for our friend. So we aligned with our own soulmates. I'll never forget that. We talk about it often. It's a beautiful thing. I come back from Mexico and I have a couple months and I decided to move to Sedona, right? I have my home in Sedona, but I also had an apartment in Los Angeles. And I decided that, I was truly my happiest in Sedona. I love Sedona so much. I feel so expansive there, so close to the earth. I just love that place so much. And it was also getting a bit ridiculous, paying rent in Los Angeles and also paying my mortgage in Sedona, and rent in LA was going up. Like, I think they raised my rent by like $700 a month. So I was like, okay, I'm piecing out. I'm not even happy here, even though I had a really cute little apartment. I had kept my house in Sedona because I thought that I would start doing retreats like on a monthly basis over there. It didn't end up working that way, but again, timing might work out in the future. I hope it will work out in the future. The only issue was that as I was moving, my mom and I were packing my stuff up, my whole life up, this gorgeous and incredible man came back into my life around the same time that we were literally packing my entire life up. I think Guy and I actually went on our first date after a couple of years because this was our 3rd first date. And you'll hear more about that in another episode. And I fell for him so fast and so hard and so passionately. I felt for him things I had never felt for anyone before, not even close. I would get in the shower and cry tears of joy, not even because he was mine, but because he existed. Like, wow, I can't believe all the work that I did on believing that men are good. He's the absolute manifestation of that. And so just a couple weeks after our first date, he asked me to be his girlfriend, which was so cute. And we started this long distance relationship. And I'll never forget those weekends when he drove 9 hours to be with me for a couple of days in Sedona. And how many memories and how much joy we fit into those weekends, and how many firsts I had. Like, we went off-roading and we just did all this cool stuff and we had so much fun. And Jupiter was obsessed with him too, which is so rare for my super cautious pup. And that was a huge sign for me. And then I would come to visit in LA too, because I could see my family and I could see my friends, and I met his family. We kind of started to integrate into life together, even living separately. But 3 months into the relationship, I knew I was marrying this man and I could never be without him for the rest of my life. And I will tell you more about our story, I hope, in the next episode, which I'm trying to get Guy to join me on. So I'll speed through the rest of this so that it doesn't become repetitive. But we got engaged in December 2022. Then we moved back to LA. He moved me out of Sedona. We did like a cart attachment to his Tesla, and it took us 14 hours to get home. It was 6 stops to charge, maybe even more. I think maybe 8. And it was such a bonding experience. For me, at least. I don't know if he'd describe it like that, but for me, it was a big bonding experience. I fell even more in love with him. And then we bought a house in LA close to our families a few months later. And then a few months after that, we started renovating. And this is not like a small renovation. We're not just changing the carpet and slapping some new paint on. We took down walls, we raised the ceiling, we added more square footage, we're redoing the pool, the entire front and the backyard. It's basically going to be a new house. And this was possible because he's an incredible contractor. He's been working with his dad since he was a kid. He grew up his entire life around building and construction. And he also has the most beautiful mind when it comes to aesthetics and art and the way that things look. And he has all these ideas that he's not necessarily able to execute with his clients who might have different ideas, different things that they want. But now that it's his home, he gets to do things the way he wants. And I can't wait to show you guys what we're creating, because it's just such a cute, it's cozy, it's not so big, but it's so beautiful and it's so us. You know, through this process, we're also going back and forth about where to get married. I hated wedding planning. I thought I would, vlog and update you guys about how wedding planning was going. I hated it. I couldn't wait for it to be done until Guy, kind of realized that I hated it so much, and he really stepped up and we started to do it together. And then we started having a really fun time together because he took on some of the tasks, I took on some of the tasks, and we were kind of just creating our own experience in a very beautiful way together. Again, the wedding was absolutely incredible. Perfect. It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. And also I'm happy it's done and that we're in this next stage of our lives, because I don't know, I never really had like a dream wedding in my mind, where a lot of people might grow up thinking like, oh, this is what I want for sure. I never really had that. I always wanted a really intimate, small event, and we did that way. We wanted to get married abroad, but we ultimately decided times are kind of rough for people right now, for a lot of people, and I didn't want to ask people to spend so much money to come just for our wedding. So we decided, even though LA prices to get married is absolutely insane, weddings here are just, the industry is insane. We decided to do it anyways. And through the process, I had to continuously work on like financial blocks that came up. But see, again, it's like everything in life gives you an opportunity to level up, to expand every little thing. So even this wedding planning, it brought us closer together than ever, because we had to learn how to communicate and how to kind of navigate our parents' desires and our desires. And, everybody else all our friends had things that they wanted to, their own input. We had to figure out how to do things our own way and how to talk and how to stay on each other's team. And I had to really work through, because I didn't want to spend the money on a big wedding. I really didn't. And we didn't have a big wedding. It was pretty intimate for an Israeli American wedding, at least. We're going to a wedding next weekend with 500 people. So for us, 150 people, that's considered small for our culture. And I didn't want to spend the money. I didn't want to do it. I was like, let's just go let's go elope. But then Guy really wanted a party, and whenever he would go to his friends' weddings, he made it so happy for everybody. And he really just went all out for everyone and danced and he wanted a party, and he deserved a party. So I got on board and I did my best, to make everything really, really classy and tasteful and meaningful. And once we got our Kabbalah rabbi on board, our Kabbalistic rabbi on board, and I started to learn about the rituals of a Jewish wedding and how important it is to invest into your wedding, because you're investing into the container of your relationship. And we put in so many rituals, and we'll talk about that in another episode if you're interested in it. Once we did that, once I realized how meaningful this wedding could be, then I was completely on board and I was so excited. We did the coolest things. And looking back, I would have done even more rituals, because my rabbi was like, we could do this ritual, this ritual. You choose whatever you want. Here's all of them. And I chose like a few out of many. So it was wonderful. and it was worth every dollar. All the money came back. We're working. Everything's perfectly fine. Yeah, it was perfect. I had to keep reminding myself that this is all a game, that money comes and goes, that experiences are worth it. You're not, you don't want to cheap out on your experiences, on memories that the memories that will stay with you for the rest of your life. And that was very expansive for me. That was a big learning lesson. Okay, and now where I'm at. Okay, recently my brothers basically stepped down from alchemy. My middle brother, who was really running the show for the last 5 years, he just had his first child. And he wanted to spend more time focusing on his family and on other things. And then my youngest brother, he's still on board, but he kind of has one foot out the door because he really wants to travel the world and not be anchored anywhere, which I totally support. It's just that suddenly, less than a month after I got married and got back from my honeymoon, I had to suddenly learn the business of alchemy from the ground up after basically just getting to wear pretty jewelry and talking about it on YouTube for 5 years, right? Just being like the face of it. So now I completely took over everything. My family's still helping me, thank goodness, but I'm basically, I'm on the emails, I'm looking at the orders. And again, that all happened for me because we had slowed down with sales over the last 6 months or so. And the second my attention was back on this business and my passion was back there and I love it now more than ever, sales started again. Sales are doing really well, thank goodness. And people are loving the jewelry. I'm kind of obsessed. I'm having the time of my life getting more involved with my business again. I'm I started the rebranding process. I'm getting new packaging made, new sustainable packaging. I'm looking for philanthropic ways to give back through alchemy. I'm just enjoying it so much. So little by little, it's just growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm so grateful and so happy. I'm also developing a new product, which I'm not going to tell you what it is yet, but it is something that I've been dreaming of for years. And I've been actively researching it for over a year now. The way that it came to me is so synchronistic, and I will tell you when it's out, because I've learned that talking about something I'm doing before I'm doing it, it just puts too much pressure on it, right? People are so well-meaning, but it's like I'm more self-motivated than I am pressure-motivated. So I decided I'm going to do the thing, then I'm going to talk about it. So we'll talk about that soon. And I've talked a lot about what I'm working on and what I'm creating, but I haven't talked about the most important thing I'm currently working on creating. So believe it or not, this is my second time recording this podcast because the second one I just didn't save it and I lost half the podcast. And the first time I cried when I started talking about this, and I think, okay, I'm more put together this time. I'm creating a little human. It is officially my turn, my angels, to become a Stargate portal from heaven into this planet. Yeah. I just get so happy every time I can talk about it, and I've been wanting to tell you for so long that I'm turning from maiden to mother. And I'm growing this little human in my belly. And I couldn't think of a better way of documenting that journey than with announcing it here on the podcast on the first episode. I couldn't wait to tell you, but I know it's very common culturally. Also, we wait until the second trimester, which I just don't like keeping happy things a secret. I wanted to tell you right away, but I just waited and remained patient. So yeah, I'm pregnant. And I'm going to talk about this extremely spiritual journey I've been on, because this has been such a deepening of my awakening. It's crazy. In the first trimester and all the mystical things that have happened around the pregnancy, I'll talk about all that in a show in the future. I have also resources for anyone else in this stage of their lives, which I'm going to talk about. And even if that's not where you're at or you're not interested in it at all, which I completely understand, I promise that this has been such a mystical and spiritual experience that you're going to get so much out of it as well, because birth is really the great metaphor for our entire human experience. So that's what I wanted to share with you. In our next episode, hopefully, we'll have Guy on. We'll talk about our story. I want you to get to know him. I'm going to be asking on Instagram what questions you have for him. So follow me on there and join our little community. I have a little broadcast community where I send you love notes all the time. I kind of use that Instagram for that more than anything these days. I also want to know what else you want to hear about in this season, right? So just message me. I try to see as many of my messages as possible. And yeah, that's where we're at. So season 2 of Inner Worlds is going to explore the concepts of life, death, and rebirth. And now you understand, you know, the juxtaposition of the joys of the birth of my niece and my wedding and my pregnancy news with, you know, mourning and still going through this really difficult time. And the world is in turmoil and kind of navigating and juggling joys with a lot of heartache and a lot of sadness, and trying to figure out how we can live our lives still while it's so hard for so many, right? And we're gonna do that. We're human, and we're gonna take it moment by moment, step by step, and little by little, and then all at once. On this season, you can expect astrologers, hopefully herbalists, shamans, channelers, healers, also midwives, doulas, plant medicine practitioners, Kabbalah teachers, and so many exciting things and people that I can't wait to learn about and alongside you, right? So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being on this journey with me, for allowing me to be on your journey with you. And once again, a couple years later, remember to honor the magnificent, wondrous universe inside of you.